Hello, everybody. Tara Bachland here again with another episode about health and nutrition. It's so essential to our life that we hardly just can't cover it enough. So today I'm here with Lori Rose, PhD, which if you've been tuning into my channel for a while, you'll recognize Lori. And today we're going to talk about the symptoms of modern nutritional deficiencies. Now I think we all learned in health class, rickets, scurvy, that kind of thing of nutritional deficiencies. So it might not be, I think we tend to think that we're so modern and everything is so spiffy and all in order that we don't have any of these conditions these days. So Lori's going to enlighten us about what are maybe some nutritional deficiency symptoms that are lurking that we might not be aware of. So Lori is a professor at Hill College, and she is the instructor and creator of the Holistic Wellness Pathway. And so she has a lot to share with us, teaching herbalism, nutrition, a holistic wellness lifestyle. And so we're fortunate to have her share some of her knowledge and experience on this topic tonight, which I'm actually curious about. I have a feeling I'm going to learn a few things tonight. So good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. And it's a timely topic because this is the time in our culture where everyone is making goals and starting anew. And there's such a misconception in the health field, or not in the health field, but about what health is and how to get healthy, that those misconceptions actually tend to create more deficiencies than they create health. And if you look at the most common health issues in our culture, so weight issues, blood sugar issues, fatigue issues, stress, anxiety, hormone issues, immune system issues, right? All of these conventional medical issues, all of those that I just mentioned can have the potential to be traced back to nutritional deficiencies. So it's really important to challenge the misconceptions that are out there about how to get healthy and what health is, and to also understand how the nutrients we put into our body should intentionally be done to create health and wellness in our organ systems, to create vitality and avoid these conventional health issues. And so I think there's not a lot of education on how the particular nutrient groups do that. Like, how are proteins helping us avoid all of those issues I just listed? How do minerals help us avoid all of those things I just listed? How do vitamins help us avoid all of those things? And so I'm hoping to cover I'm hoping to make those connections tonight as we talk about these things.
That sounds really good. I'm already intrigued.
Awesome. So I'm trying to think of which angle I'm going to go. I'm going to harp on the misconceptions or just let the evidence speak for itself. But one of the most common issues in our country, no matter what health issue we may be presenting with, is fatigue. And a lot of times people will call fatigue adrenal fatigue. And if you look at the science behind this, adrenal fatigue really it's been completely debunked. And so a better term for this is chronic fatigue. But even that is one of those like catch-alls that if you're sick, you have fatigue. Whether you're sick with an acute illness or you're sick with a chronic illness, fatigue is one of your symptoms. And so if you dig into the science and the research behind this, a better explanation is mitochondrial deficiency. And So for those of you who don't remember your health class from 7th grade or high school, the mitochondria are the little organelles inside each of your cells that take the food you eat and turn that food into energy. And so they are the producers of the feeling of vitality and wellness in our body. Like if we're feeling energetic, it's because our mitochondria are being supported and our mitochondria are doing their jobs efficiently. What they don't teach you in 7th grade health class or high school biology is that what we do, both lifestyle and food wise, directly impact how many mitochondria are in our bodies and how efficiently those mitochondria are working. And so we can directly influence every minute how vital we're feeling, the message we're giving our mitochondria for how we want them to be functioning. And so before I get too much into this, I do want to give the disclaimer that anytime a client comes to me with a health issue, it could be myriad things causing that health issue. And it's usually not just one thing. So tonight we're talking about nutritional deficiencies and how they link to these health issues. But I do want to say that for all of these health issues, it could be lifestyle, it could be stress, it could be zillions of things we're not talking about tonight. However, it could also be nutritional deficiencies. And so we're going to talk about that angle of it. And anytime I have a client, what I do is I talk about all of those different things with them and try to pinpoint, okay, which of these could possibly be contributing to that health issue. And like I said, it's usually not one thing. Oftentimes it's a nutritional thing, as well as many others. So for your mitochondria to function at all, there are these molecules in your body called enzymes, and enzymes are proteins. And they are proteins that make your chemical reactions happen. And so for mitochondria to turn your food into energy, it's dozens and dozens of chemical reactions, and each one of those is done by an enzyme. And it's done by a different enzyme. And so since enzymes are protein, one thing you need enough of, and not just for your mitochondria, but for literally everything in your body, is protein. So we are not really taught to focus on protein. So if you set a goal in New Year's, it's probably around weight loss. And if you get on because we're taught that's what health is, right? And if we get on the internet and we look up how to lose weight, it's going to tell you to cut calories. And it's going to tell you to do that by either being in the low fat camp or the low carb camp, right? Like those are the camps that you're going to see out there. Really, neither one of those is correct. And neither one of those teaches to track your protein and make sure you're getting adequate protein and make sure the protein you're getting is sufficient to fuel the demands on your body. And so very rarely does a client come to me consuming enough protein, whether or not they've just set a New Year's goal or not. Protein is just not a message we get unless you're in to the strength training field, resistance training, right? They're going to learn all about protein. Everyone else ignores it. And so that's one of the sources of the lack of information here of why we're not really taught to track protein. So protein's crucial. It makes every chemical reaction happen in your body, including your mitochondria. Another thing that makes these enzymes in your mitochondria function and turn your food into energy are called coenzymes. Coenzymes are little molecules that get into each enzyme and make the enzyme work. So first you have to have the enzyme, then you have to have the coenzymes to make the enzymes go. right? So proteins create enzymes. Coenzymes are usually vitamins and minerals. In general, everyone is deficient in vitamins and minerals. We'll talk about why here in just a second. But here's the thing. I mentioned that there's dozens and dozens of different enzymes that make these mitochondria turn your food into energy, right? So here's the kicker. If just one of the enzymes in this whole process is missing a coenzyme, one vitamin or one mineral, that's it. If it's just missing one, the process shuts down and it can't go because the whole thing has to work for the energy to be created. And so I'm going to show y'all, this is actually a slide straight from the nutrition course that is currently, if you're watching this January of 2023, currently being created with the Matthew Wood Institute. So this is taken straight from that course that I'm teaching along with Phyllis Light. I'm trying to make it bigger so y'all can see it. There we go. So this is just a cartoon of what's happening around and inside the mitochondria in your cells. And it's really just to show you that these dozens of enzymes require vitamin B3 and vitamin B1 and B6 and B12 and B5 and folic acid and all of these B vitamins, right? And if one of these is missing, the process cannot go. It will not make your energy, which is ATP. So you'll feel fatigued. But also, this food we're eating that we're supposed to be turning into energy, it backs up into our body and contributes to blood sugar issues. If your sugar can't get turned into energy, it doesn't have anywhere to go, right? So it stays in your blood. And so this is a link between a lack of vitamins and blood sugar issues, which coincide with weight issues, which coincide with energy issues, right? There's all these interlinkings here. And so it's just it's a visual I like to show people because it's like, oh, I need my vitamins. I have to get my vitamins or I can't turn my food into energy. This also shows you how this whole thing is really, it's separate from calories, right? Like if you get online and you're like weight loss and calories in and calories out and let's track my calories and make sure I have, just the right amount of calories. If your calories, whether you're eating more calories than you need or less calories than you need, whatever, if those calories don't include these vitamins, what's the point? Like your food's not getting turned into energy. So regardless of your calorie standards, your vitamins, your coenzymes, that's what's needed to make your mitochondria function.
So if I were to repeat back, what I'm seeing is at the top of the visual, I see glycolysis, or so converting sugars to energy is basically what this is about. And it's like a production line. So if you imagine like modern production line, if anything goes wrong in that line, it's going to stop and you're not going to get the end result, which is an electron, which is literally energy. Like your body is literally electrical, and you won't get the end result, which is that electron, and bam, energy. And this could go wrong at any stage. And so it's important to have these coenzymes, which are like the helpers in a way to keep the machine going. Is that a okay summary?
Absolutely. And so not only are you not going to get the product that you were going for, but all those materials on that production line are going to back up, right? They're going to get shoved somewhere, which those materials, that's glucose, and glucose backing up in your blood and having nowhere to go. Well, that's a blood sugar issue. And so go ahead.
Well, that's fascinating because I've never understood diabetes in this way in particular. And that's super helpful. I see at the beginning of the cycle too, the B3, the niacin, and we have a family member who is really having energy issues. And, it's a bit of sometimes you just have to try things out, right? Well, there's more recent, you have the NADH, but is more and more common. People are learning about the nicotinamide riboside, and he had significant, like, he's like, I don't want to go without my NAD. And he's like, that absolutely made a change, especially in brain fog and even physical energy. So that's really interesting to see that was a component where his system was obviously getting backed up.
Right, because it's that NAD that takes, well, I'm getting a little chemistry here, but see, these are NADHs. Well, NAD takes the H's from your food, and that's what allows the food to process through and become energy. So if you don't have NAD, then it all backs up.
Wow, we're going to learn a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's... So my clients will come to me with these blood sugar issues, and I'll be like, so how many vegetables do you eat a day? And they're like, why are we talking about vegetables? Can we talk about grains? Like, because everyone's like, decrease your starchy food to address blood sugar issues. And you can decrease your starchy food all you want, whatever. You've got to have your vitamins, or your food's not turning into energy, and it's going to back up and it's going to create blood sugar issues.
And this is just the vitamin Bs. We're not even talking about other coenzymes at this point.
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. This step also requires magnesium. The electron transport chain also requires tons of fatty acids. Like, there's vitamins, there's minerals, and these are just the water soluble B vitamins. But you can see if you're just missing one of those things, the whole thing kind of shuts down, which I brought in blood sugar just because it was sort of related. But here we're really talking about fatigue. And you mentioned the brain fog. And so mitochondria aren't just creating like energy in your muscles, right? Mitochondria are in every organ of your body. They make your brain work. They make your heart work. They make your muscles work. They make everything work. And so, yeah, mitochondria dysfunction can absolutely relate to brain fog and other neurological issues, because you have to have ATP before anything else works in your body. Mm-hmm. Another thing, so vegetables, of course, that's where most of these B vitamins are going to come from. Another thing I want to mention, though, is one of these is B12, and B12 comes from animal products. And so something I see this a lot in, and you brought up brain function, and we'll talk about this more in a minute. But there's a concomitant issue that shows up a lot in vegans and vegetarians, and that is the fatigue and anxiety/depression, right? And so if you don't have mitochondria in your brain functioning, and you don't have B12 letting your mitochondria create energy, then that's going to stop this whole process, right? And so something Phyllis and I talk about a lot in this nutrition course is you need every nutrient, right? You need your carbs, you need your proteins, you need your fats, you need your vitamins, you need your minerals, you need your water. And if there are certain vitamins that are found primarily in certain food groups, and those food groups are being left out, then that's has the potential to create deficiencies. And we don't push any diet type, but we do want to make sure and educate on how every different diet choice has a different potential to lead to a different nutrition deficiency, and how to address that, right? How to be aware of those potentials and how to overcome them. And so one surefire sign of a nutrition deficiency, and it's usually the first thing that's going to show up, is fatigue, right? Because if your mitochondria aren't functioning for whatever reason, then you're not going to have the energy you need. Then all the other health issues tend to just be symptoms, right? Like an energy deficiency will show up in some people one way versus other people another way, but oftentimes you can track it back to are you in mitochondrial dysfunction? How are your mitochondria functioning? And it's just a good starting place, because if this isn't functioning, nothing else can function. So starting here, making sure this is going correctly is a good jumping off point.
And in this diagram, is it safe to assume that if you have a lot of sugar, like too much at the beginning of the production line, then you need more nutrients to be able to process it?
Okay, so that's a great thought. And we'll get into this in the course, because we'll have a whole chapter on like a whole thing on carbs and a whole thing on fats and a whole thing on proteins. But I will just go ahead and tease that your body also doesn't want an endless amount of energy. It wants the energy that it needs. And so what happens in your mitochondria is once your body has the ATP that it needs to do what it needs to do, which you're telling it what it needs to do by your activity, by your stress, by the food you give it, etc. Once it has enough ATP, then it will come and turn these off. So whether or not you have all the vitamins, if you create too much ATP, this will also turn off. And so that's really what happens if you have too much glucose. That will create tons of extra ATP, and then the ATP goes and shuts this down. So you need adequate glucose. If you don't have enough glucose, this also won't work, right? You need enough glucose, vitamins, minerals, coenzymes to make it work, but you need just enough to not create too much ATP to turn the whole thing off.
So I always like to dig in. So I will try to hold myself back in that sense. But would a synopsis be, this is just something to consider for diabetes in particular?
Oh, 100. Yeah, 100%. So that's another thing. If someone comes to me with glucose issues, blood sugar issues, I look, one, do you have what's needed to make your mitochondria work? If yes, are you giving your mitochondria too much glucose? Because that's the other thing that will turn it off. The production line will turn off if you don't have enough resources to make the product. The production line will turn off if you've made enough product. So two things will turn it off, and you want to make sure neither one of those are happening so that the production line is working.
That's so fascinating. Our bodies are amazing.
Yeah.
And thinking of this too, I mean, isn't it, so for example, if a person drinks a lot of alcohol, doesn't that exhaust the system of the B vitamins?
Yeah. So that alcohol steals all of the NAD. And I mentioned earlier that if you don't have NAD, then there's nothing to take these H's off of all of your food. And so then that shuts it down too.
So, yeah. Wow. Our body is so amazing.
So we're talking about two health issues here, right? Chronic fatigue, which is going to be far reaching, but then also directly blood sugar issues, because it directly is related to this. But an assumption people make with type 2 diabetes is, oh, that's too many carbs. And that's all they think. So then they cut out carbs. But what if it wasn't too many carbs? What if it was not enough vitamins? What if it was not enough animal protein and it was B12? What if it was something else not processing the niacin, like you mentioned, so we can't assume one health issue, one cause.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said, it's a troubleshooting. And so understanding all of the ins and out of all the possibilities is a more productive approach.
Yeah. I'm going to hold off on some questions because I'm going to see where you go with this instead of, otherwise we'll stick to probably this one slide the whole time.
Hey, that's okay, right? Let's see what you ask next, and then I'll transition.
Well, I remember as we were putting together this course, as we were talking about it, you and Phyllis are putting it together, but as we were talking about it, This is a course that each you and she have taught at college level to students who are learning this as a broader dynamic. But this is what you're teaching at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism is specifically for herbalists. And I remember what both of you are saying is that this nutrition is not just about taking supplements, but you're talking about nutrition sourced from foods and good sources of food, and that having the right nutrients also helps the herbs work better. That it's not, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I have so many things to say right now. You just brought up so many like soapboxes that I get on. Make sure if I don't come back to everything you said before we move on, you remind me. Because the first thing I want to mention is relying just on supplements, which is huge in the herbal world, and it's huge in the naturopath world too. So I am a PhD in biology. So I've studied cellular biology. I've studied ecosystems, ecology. So I know the micro and the macro. Well, then I'm also a holistic nutritionist, board certified. I'm also an herbalist, and I'm also a wellness coach. So I've seen so many different perspectives, but when I was learning from each of those perspectives, they were all very pigeonholed, right? And so if you study just one of those, you're going to miss out on all of the other ones. And something a lot of the other ones miss out on is not understanding that supplements and whole food nutrients just are not the same thing. So, for example, if someone comes to me with chronic fatigue and blood sugar issues, and through a line of questioning, I'm like, oh, well, you could, and maybe I analyze their blood sugar, right? Or their blood lab. And I see, oh, you have a potential to be low on B1. So I just recommend they supplement with B1. And maybe they feel a little better. Maybe they don't. Cool, whatever. But if instead I'm like, why don't you try to eat 6 to 10 servings of veggies a day? Well, over here, they're just getting B1, which is just addressing this one issue that we talked about this one thing. I'm missing all the other stuff that we maybe haven't talked about, haven't looked at, haven't analyzed, versus over here, if they're eating 6 to 10 servings of veggies a day, they're going to get the B1, but then they're also going to get all the other vitamins, all the other minerals, the water, the phytonutrients, right? That's not just addressing the one issue we talked about and the one deficiency we perhaps uncovered, but it's going to catch all the other stuff too. So it's such a more, I hate to use this term cliche, like it's a holistic way of addressing it. Like you're addressing the whole thing with whole foods. Our bodies evolved to need those foods, and those foods give us what we need. So relying just on supplements is a huge flaw, I think, in the health world, even in the holistic health world. I think supplements are important. I think most people should be taking supplements, but I think they should be supplemental to a whole foods diet.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would go at it the other way, you're going to miss so many things, and you have the potential to do harm. Because if you, going back to this example, if I'm just having this client take all this B1 and they get an excess of B1, that's going to make the body think they're too low in all the other vitamins that interact with B1. So it actually has the potential to create some harm if you don't think about it from an all nutrients approach.
Mm-hmm. I think what's interesting too is the foods that we crave and we naturally like, and what it means to me. I imagine that it's our body telling us something, like we need that. There's women have talked about it for probably generations, the foods they craved when they were pregnant, and we can assume, I assume that that's what their body needed, right? I don't know if there's been studies actually done on that, but it seems like it would be true.
Well, and here's a classic example of that a lot of people are probably going to experience, this week and next week. And as they're trying to do all these, like, cut out all your carbs and decrease your calories, and you do great all day. And then at night, you're like, I did so wonderful all day, but then I just sugar binged all night long. And then they feel bad about themselves, but they don't think like, well, I'm eating almost no calories. I'm exercising more than I did. I'm putting all these demands on my mitochondria. My mitochondria needs glucose. Well, when our brain thinks glucose, where did we usually get glucose? All of our sweets and all of our sugar. So the craving for the sweets was actually a body telling you what it needed. We just didn't connect that it needed, like, oh, but if I also had 6 to 10 servings of veggies and all of those veggies give me all the glucose I need, then I wouldn't have had that binge at night. Because what a lot of people do is cut out the bad, whatever they think that bad is, whether or not they should be cutting it, which we get into a lot in the course. But they cut out the bad before they build the good. Well, then you don't have anything.
Your body's literally craving it, especially like recently I did up my workouts and I had forgotten about the protein. It had been so long since I had increased my workout that I would just get like ravenous. And I mean, like the kind where you're standing in the fridge, eating directly from the fridge, kind of ravenous. And it took me a couple of days to realize, oh yeah, I've been building muscle and my body needs this. And it's the same thing about the glucose, but especially I've learned in the last couple of years, this affects some people more than others, that your body needs glucose overnight. Otherwise you can wake up in the middle of the night if your blood sugars are really fluctuating a lot. So
I've heard that too, that you can blood sugar crash at night. And so, because another thing we learn, which there's a lot of evidence to support this, but it's also done mostly on males, like middle-aged males, is that stopping eating 5-ish hours before you go to bed helps with circadian rhythm and helps with sleep. And it actually does, maybe for everyone, maybe for just a subgroup of people, but also for some people, that's too long to go. And so you're sugar crashing in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many tangents.
Yeah.
So the modern, let's say, diseases so far that were brought up are diabetes for sure, fatigue, all kinds of fatigue.
So we've talked about chronic fatigue. We talked about blood sugar issues. Something else you have mentioned, and so we can just pivot there, are neurological issues. So I talked a tiny bit. I mentioned depression and anxiety. You mentioned brain fog, but this could also be sleep. This could also be just like memory, even memory issues, any neurological related thing. And I can't wait to show you this picture.
Right.
So just like the mitochondria, right, has dozens of steps start to finish making it happen. It takes enzymes. Those enzymes are proteins. And then it takes the co-enzymes to make those chemical reactions go. And if one is missing, the end product isn't made, right? Well, the same thing happens in our brain, creating our neurotransmitters. I just clicked the completely wrong button, but here we go. I can't wait to show you this. This slide shows up so much in the nutrition course because it relates to almost every one of the nutrient categories. Okay, so I just want us to look at the end product here first, what we're creating. Melatonin for sleep, serotonin for happy, adrenaline and noradrenaline, that's epinephrine and norepinephrine. This is anxiety response, right? Handling stress.
Or attention.
Yes. Dopamine, goal setting, motivation, passion, right? These are those 3 neurotransmitters are in the same production line, essentially. Then we have GABA over here. This is the relaxing neurotransmitter. Acetylcholine, also the relaxing neurotransmitter. So here's what we're trying to produce in the brain. Where does it start?
Proteins.
Proteins. Starts at the beginning. How many times does someone go to the doctor with insomnia, depression, anxiety, always tense, lack of motivation? How many times are they told, well, how many proteins are you eating?
I have not heard that in stories.
Yeah, like probably none. Which isn't funny. It's not funny. But it just is what it is. So if you don't have enough protein, you cannot make your neurotransmitters, right? You just can't. It's the beginning. If you don't have the resources, you cannot make the product. Mm-hmm. Also, all of this is happening inside your brain. Your brain is 70% saturated fat. The other camp that the lose weight, cut calories people are going to hear with their goals right now is low fat, because fat's high in calories. So cut the fat to reduce your calories. If you don't have enough fat, your brain cannot function, right? So you need fat, you need proteins. Then let's look at all the things in between, right? These are all the co-enzymes, the helpers. We've got zinc, a mineral. We've got our B vitamins again. We've got calcium, iron, some more minerals, magnesium, vitamin C. It's a vitamin we haven't talked about yet, right? We've got copper. What's some I'm missing? Manganese, right? If you there's phosphorus. So just to make this function, we need protein, we need fats, we need vitamins, we need minerals. 4 of the 6 nutrient categories. And I'm sure the other ones are involved, right? But this is just what's in this one, probably extremely oversimplified display of what's happening in the nervous system. And this is just in the brain creating neurotransmitters, not in how they communicate to the rest of the body. Mm-hmm. And so this hits multiple common complaints and common health issues: insomnia, depression, anxiety, inability to relax, memory.
Mm-hmm. And I see at the top of this chain is stomach acid.
Oh man, that's a whole other direction we could go, right? Which is just digestive health. But yeah, if you don't have enough stomach acid to process those proteins, then you can eat all the protein you want. But if your stomach can't break them down and release them into your bloodstream as amino acids, then your body can't use them. And what a lot of people don't realize is that in order to create stomach acid, you need enough potassium. Mm. So potassium is not something you should take as a supplement. Potassium is something most people are low in because it comes from dark leafy green veggies. Mm. How many people eat 4 servings of dark leafy green veggies every single day? And so, but again, those dark leafy green veggies are going to have these vitamins, they're going to have these minerals, they're going to make these processes go.
Mm-hmm. And essential too. I mean, there's a certain blood pressure medication that will lower potassium. And so you just have, hence the down the chain effects.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's another layer when clients come to me is, not only do you have to think about lifestyle, but you also have to think about food, but then you also have to think about, what medications are they on that could be these symptoms they're experiencing could just be side effects. Right. Mm-hmm. And so we can throw herbs at this. Oh, I forgot to mention something before we switched here. Remind me. Don't let me forget. But we can throw herbs at this. We can throw nootropics at this. We can throw adaptogens at this, right? Because that's what we do when someone has neurological issues combined with stress. But if a medication is causing this, that's not going to help. Or if a nutrient deficiency is causing this, that's not going to help. And that's what I was going to say before. If someone has this chronic fatigue and we throw adaptogens at them as herbalists, ignoring all the rest of this, we're not doing anything, right? We may actually be throwing fuel on a burnt out fire and making the problem worse, like putting more demand on a burnt out system that doesn't have the resources to live up to the demand. Mm-hmm. And so nootropics can do the same thing. And so that's why, I mean, I almost think herbalism without nutrition, like it's kind of dangerous. Like it is.
Mm-hmm. I remember several months ago, I'm going to do a segment here sometime on burnout because it happens. And so I was throwing herbs at myself, like, this is going to help, and I even knew that, I have a very like determined kind of personality. Like I'll keep going. I'm like, okay, I just need more vervain. I need more agrimony. I need more valerian, but there's a certain point, like if you don't actually do what you need to do, like I just needed to hit like a brick wall and relax, it's like that aha pivotal moment change. No amount of herbs can help. You actually have to change the thing that is causing the issue. That was a big aha moment for me. I mean, like, it's one of those things, but like, until you experience it, you're like, oh yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. But, it's kind of like the conventional medical field. The reason why they don't ask about proteins when we go to them with depression and insomnia and anxiety is they haven't been taught that. Mm-hmm. And if we're not taught these things as herbalists or as wellness coaches, and if we're not taught lifestyle changes as nutritionists, and we don't like, if someone comes to me and I'm just a nutritionist and I'm throwing proteins and vitamins and minerals at them because that's my toolbox, and I don't tell them, oh, well, maybe you need to say no to about 5 of your commitments, and maybe you need to go to bed before 3 a.m. and maybe you need to, address some of the stuff from your past, right? Those are the toolboxes that someone who's just a nutritionist aren't going to have. And so that's why I think it's such a unique, the word holistic has to include all of those things. And I feel very fortunate that I just by serendipity got to study all of those different fields, not even knowing they were different fields until I was in them. But when I was in them, I'm like, oh, they're just learning one toolkit. Oh, they're just learning one toolkit. Oh, they're just learning one toolkit. And so recognizing that it could be any or all of those toolkits can help us prevent just throwing one thing at our clients. And then, of course, just throwing one thing at ourselves when we're going through our own health crises.
Right. Even just
we're people too.
Even just having the different vantage point, being able to see it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I want to point out here too is a lot of these minerals are found in higher amounts in animal protein. So iron is more bioavailable in animal protein. Zinc is more available in animal protein. And so same thing with the B12. It's just one of those things that different diet choices have the potential for different deficiencies, and to be aware of how that could possibly show up. Mm-hmm. Because it does explain the link between, vegan vegetarianism and the high correlation with depression and anxiety.
Good to know.
But I mean, even an omnivorous diet person can be too low on animal protein. Like anyone can be not getting enough protein and minerals.
And then you're standing in the fridge eating directly from the fridge.
Right. Exactly. All right. So let's see. I'm going to quit my screen share so I can see what time it is. So we want to talk about one more.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Well, since we're sort of talking about a stress response and anxiety, if someone comes to me with stress and anxiety, I was about to say something, but I'll say it in a minute. Stress and anxiety, I'll always start with mitochondria. You got to have ATP. Then I'll start with what I just showed you, like go through what are your proteins, your vitamins and minerals. You need all those things to create your neurotransmitters. But then next we'll move to the adrenal glands, because there are two main organ systems that support our stress response. And the more stress we're demanding on our body, the more of those nutrients those organs are going to need. So one is the brain, which I just showed you, and the other is the adrenal gland. And so the adrenal glands are down here on top of your kidneys, but they create stress hormones as opposed to stress neurotransmitters. So the stress hormone I'm talking about is cortisol, right? So here's the end product, like all the enzymes, right? We've sort of had the same common feature of an enzyme reaction with an end product. The end product here is cortisol. Well, for this cortisol to be created, you need vitamin B5, you need vitamin C. No one talks about these things for stress. No one. But then in order to convert molecules into cortisol, you also require cholesterol. So the stress response is a fat demanding response, food fat demanding response. And if we're low on food fat, then our stress response will be handled very poorly. And our cortisol production, well, it's just not going to work, right? You can't produce cortisol without the cholesterol demanded to produce cortisol. But there's a huge fat phobia, food fat phobia in this country. And so it's no wonder that symptoms of poor handling of stress are so common. And the other thing I was going to say here is the other thing the adrenal glands produce are the sex hormones. So you also see all the estrogens here, and you see the testosterones here. And so what these low-fat diets can also contribute to are hormone dysfunction. So libido issues, myriad hormone issues, because if you've got a decrease in the production of these estrogens and progesterones, here's the progesterone, then you're going to have hormone issues there too.
That was super enlightening for me when I learned that cortisol was made from progesterone, and progesterone being so important to balance a woman's cycle, especially premenstrually. And that especially as I noticed, like my stress was going way, way up, and it was kind of becoming, it became like its own perpetual cycle. At a certain point, I was like just in a biochemical kind of rut even. And absolutely, I had before that. And of course, at a certain age, your hormones change too. But the stress certainly doesn't help. And I could definitely see and experience, it felt like the progesterone was being robbed because it was being converted into cortisol, which was such an aha moment for me.
Yeah, because if you look at this, the rest of these were just sort of like single pathways, right? This was one pathway. But this one, it all starts here, and there's different routes that it goes. And so if we're in a stress response that's demanding these resources turn into cortisol, and we're not giving it more resources so that it can also produce all these other things won't be able to be produced. In addition to eventually, the end product we're directly using won't also be produced. And so unlike if we go to the doctor and they're like, you have this, take this. In the holistic health field, if your practitioner really is holistic, there's not going to be you have this, take this. It's going to be this full synthesis of asking about your lifestyle, asking about all of your nutrient categories, maybe suggesting certain herbs, but those supplements and herbs should be supplements. And the lifestyle and nutrition choices are really the basis of how all of these things are functioning in the body.
Yeah, certainly.
Well, I think, we covered about half of the things that we could, but that's why the nutrition course is created, because you just can't shove a whole program's worth of information into an hour. But hopefully that gave those of you who are, in the mindset of wanting to make some health changes, wanting to set goals, hopefully that sort of reframed what you think health is and reframed ways you can address it. Because really it's about getting enough of all of your nutrients more than it is about cutting out all sorts of stuff.
Can explain a lot of things, and you listed many of them. Now, I put this in my hand because I was supposed to remind you of something.
I remembered when I was talking, I was going to say throwing adaptogens at chronic fatigue. And then we talked about throwing nootropics at the brain. So yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And there's a certain point too, where you just can't consume enough caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially with certain body types, I found for myself, it's like it can make it worse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because caffeine creates a cortisol response. And so it's actually like it's perpetuating the cycle in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So many things to what's going on in the body, but I think we're way more educated these days, and we have a lot to learn, but we are way more educated in all this. Oh man. Well, I'm looking even more forward to this course than ever. So the course that we're talking about is at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, and the first class is already up, and for a short time here, you can still watch the first class for free. And we have an early bird special going on through January 8th. And if you're watching this after January 8th, 2023, the classes are all recorded. And so you can always check them out. You can always join. And that's just MatthewWoodInstituteOfHerbalism.com, and go to all courses. Just type in nutrition into the search and you'll find it. And there are many subjects that, wrong button. There are many subjects that Lori and Phyllis will be covering, and topic by topic. This is specifically for herbalists, so it's not going as in depth as what is taught in college curriculum that both Lori and Phyllis have or do teach, but definitely sufficient to help an herbalist to be aware of nutritional deficiencies that may be contributing to a health condition. So the first class, which is for just a while yet still available for free, what is good or bad nutrition? They'll get into carbs, proteins, lipids, water-soluble vitamins. Water-soluble vitamins continued. There's a lot to cover there. Fat-soluble vitamins, major minerals, electrolytes and water, trace minerals, and supplements. And so it'll be quite thorough within the context of this nutrition course for herbalists. Would you like to add anything else to that description?
Yeah, one thing I just want to make sure and disclaim is that Phyllis and I are not pushing any specific diet choice. We're not here to food shame people or to pressure people. And really the main thing we want to make sure is that everyone knows how to get enough of everything. We don't want to create scarcity mentality or food phobia around any food category. We just want everyone to understand how all the nutrient groups support all of the organ systems and what those deficiencies and toxicities can look like. And so I don't want anyone to be with specific diet choices to be scared to join. You know what I mean? Because there's just so much food shame out there, and that's just not what we're about.
I'm so glad you said that, because it's so out of my purview. Like it's automatic that to me that we're not doing that, but I'm so glad that you emphasize that, because it's so true. There's so much to learn without doing that, and yes, this will be.
Yeah. And like, there's just so much information. And so many people hear so many different things that it's already confusing and stressful enough that we don't want to project any of our personal choices onto anyone else, because everyone's going to make totally different choices because everyone's in a completely different situation. So many different things impact food choices. And that's something we cover in this first free class is, food isn't just about feeding your body. There's so many other things that go into our diet choices. And we don't want to ignore those things or make those things less important than other things. So
that reminds me too, that the live class, of course, you'll be able to ask questions of Lori and Phyllis. And then also once the class recording is up, we do have a discussion section, a Q&A function that is online, so that even if you're watching the recording later, you can ask questions of the teachers, which is super helpful because you can join at any time. And you can also learn from other people's questions. I know that's one of the benefits of being in any classes. Different people's perspectives, they come up with different questions, and we learn from that as well. You can also be in contact with Lori at LoriRoseHolistic.com is your URL, correct?
So it's Lori Rose Holistic at .wordpress.com.
Okay. And you can also link to her in her bio. That information is there as well. So we hope you join us. And those of you who are joining on YouTube currently, if you have any comments or questions, what would you like to learn about next as we talk about holistic wellness? What have been your experiences? Maybe you've yourself have experienced one of these deficiencies, or maybe this is leading you on to a new path. Oh, I can look for a different solution. And so we'd love to hear from you. Anything else, Lori?
No, I just hope you all join the course. It's going to be so fun, and we're going to learn so much. And we're just a fun group. And so the next few months, I'm just really looking forward to learning with you all.
And we're going to open up a new toolbox for
absolutely.
I can just see what I imagine is one of the toolboxes, that have the different shelves, and you're like going around to your stations and just adding the different compartments to a multifaceted toolbox.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great idea for a visual. So maybe I'll bring something like that in. Such a hands moving teacher. So
go to the tool aisle in at your local, what would it be? Do you have Menards and Home Depot, or what are your?
We have Home Depot and Lowe's.
Okay, Home Depot or Lowe's. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the visual. All right.
Yep, gonna get some props.
Thanks for joining us, Lori. You have